So I'm Bill Carell. Welcome to another episode of Lighting the Candle, A World That Works. And with me today, to introduce themselves, to my immediate right on the screen, we have Ken. Please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Ken Caputo, and let's see, who am I today? I think today, I don't know, I think it's kind of my standard lately, just really interested in meaningful human connection, empowered learning, and recognizing the joy in the present moment, the moment you're in right now.
Excellent. Shelley?
So, off of that, who am I today? I am feeling like it's just great to be alive again. Just, I don't know if it's just the wind blowing, if it's the temperature, but it feels different. And it feels good to be alive again.
Yeah, the lifting of the heat is nice. It's been pretty oppressive.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, today feels like a lighter day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually posted a quick scan of the backyard. You know, it's 63 degrees. The air is dry. You know, a little bit of a breeze. If there was something I could do to make this day more perfect, I have no idea what it would be.
No.
Yeah, I would imagine there's windows open everywhere right now. Just
there are.
You know?
Absolutely.
Yep.
I testify.
Yep.
So welcome back, Ken. We are 3 of 5 this week. So I want to take a moment and a kind of presence Lisa Sheehan, who is out in the world doing great things, and Vanessa Lewis, who's at home recovering from a dental attack on Monday. And we're really hoping that she's feeling better real soon. So to kind of kick things off, I'd like to give a report. And the report would go like this. I'm seeing very mixed participation by people on Zoom at this point. I think we're seeing a very interesting kind of a shift with people who wanted to go through going to the same meetings motion that they were doing prior to February, I want to say, and gave it a good shot for 2 or 3 months. And then things started to dwindle as we sort of had the similar meetings that we'd have in person without having that ability for physically touching each other or gathering in small groups afterwards and you know, exchanging pleasantries, introducing people, you know, one-on-one, making small groups and making plans for coffee and lunch and those sort of things afterwards. And it occurred to me today in one of my meetings, the Facilities Friends meeting, why don't we take this opportunity to stretch this paradigm and see how far we can go in terms of making this disanimate and non-intimate way of looking and touching each other. It's verbal and a flat screen, 2-dimensional picture at best. Why don't we look to see if there's a way for us to recreate and put into place some sort of intimacy in networking, or some sort of intimacy in terms of engaging people in consulting, or engaging people in company activities, you know, through this. We're going to be doing this for a while, in other words. And we can't have a half to 3/4 of the people on the population checked out. So that's evidence number 1 I'm offering to you. Evidence number 2, I haven't seen the polls from yesterday's RNC, but across the board last week, the DNC television numbers were down about 30% over 2016. Wouldn't surprise me if they're somewhere similar for the RNC as well. And I offer 2 possibilities for that. Either one, people are not engaged and they're not interested because of the COVID, and this is how they feel about watching the screen all the time. And then number 2, there may be other ways that they're watching that are not being captured in the Nielsen polls. Does that make sense? They could be watching on their laptops. They could be watching on their phones. None of those things are going to show up. So what I'm asking, and I just went way out on a limb, I committed myself by showing you my evidence. Now, I don't know if it's right or wrong, and what's your sense of what it's going to take to get people to be re-engaged at this point?
So, it was kind of new and exciting, Zoom, right? And you have all these meetings to go to, and you felt really important, and you can see yourself on the screen, but yet you're sitting in your chair. So there's this a little bit, I think, not just for me, but I know even some of my introvert friends, a little more confidence. Like, you're in your environment, but you can speak and you can be yourself, or you can shut off the screen. Like, you have options. Part of that is it's worn off, right? I think that piece has worn off, the relatedness, the ability to connect and engage, look and see if someone's paying attention. I was on a staff call. Half the people have their videos off. They're all muted. Who knows what they're doing? That's the lack of control piece, and related and engagement to really your target, whatever the person on the other end. What it's going to take is some type of middle ground, if we're going to have to do this for a while, right? And here's what our staff did with that. We broke it down into smaller groups. You don't have more than 4 or 5. Everybody has their video on and everybody participates. So it's not like you can hide in the background, like you can just be another listener. If you're going to engage, if you're going to participate in this networking, I think, and what has really worked as far as participation and really getting some information from people you may not have gotten information from before, is really scaling that down. None of this big group things, large networking. It doesn't work on Zoom. You don't get to walk around the room and say, hey, I want to talk to you. I mean, you can in the chat, right? And that's fine. But I think if you break it down and you're really able to then speak one-on-one, or you breakout rooms. Breakout rooms have well. So Zoom has breakout rooms, and you can have everybody gather, people that are there networking, and then this week, these 5 go to this room, this 5 go to this room, or maybe you have topics that are in each room. So that is what I have found that we have shifted to right now. And it has worked from a strategic planning standpoint, and an engagement standpoint. And that's really just on the business side.
So how many would be in the whole group if they were all in the same room? 25
to 30. Okay.
And
so
is there like a room leader or some people that have gone through a briefing ahead of time, so that there's actual work that gets done and a product from the breakout rooms?
So for that particular, or you have, networking, it could be just you have one topic and you have 4 different breakout rooms and you have 6 people in each breakout room and they discuss that topic. The host is in charge of creating the breakout rooms and who goes in. But that has worked. You can do a strategy meeting in 2 hours and have 30 people, break it down into 5 people in 6 rooms. Each has a topic. You come back and you have a strategy, and then you regroup it and so there are ways. The personal touch, I think, I don't think we'll ever get back to until we can sit across from the table like we did at Ninjas, right? And and have lunch and just go around the room, have people engage, have people really be able to get a feeling and get a smile and like have that without the distraction of being behind a screen. I'm not sure I have seen a solution to that yet.
Yeah. So here's what I think is kind of interesting. And again, I'm not intentionally leaving you out. I know you're going to have a lot to say. And at the same time, I don't know how many Zoom meetings you're on with 40 or 50 people. So how is it that something like Zoom, where it's live and in person, seems so impersonal, and something like Facebook or Twitter or Instagram seems so much more personal and it's not live? It's, you know what I'm saying?
One's emotional and one is logic.
Yeah. Say some more about that, please.
So it's kind of like the quote, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. The emotional part is what people remember. And then, you know, you take them on a journey through your emotional journey, through whatever it is. And, you know, that's what they're going to remember. They'll take the logic and apply it, but they're going to remember the emotion, that your emotion that brought them an epiphany, that brought them to a place of emotion, that brought them to where they want to be because they heard it from you.
Yes.
That is what Facebook does really, really well. Really well. With some tidbits of, you know, people trying to throw in the logic, but then there's LinkedIn. You can have all the logic you want without emotion.
Talk about dry as toast, right?
Yeah.
So it's, Ken, any thoughts on this so far?
A couple questions, I guess. You know, I mean, the first question would be, let's look at it professionally. Like, I flashed on a book and I checked to make sure I had the author right. Cameron Herold wrote a book called Meetings Suck. Because whether it's, I have read dozens of books on trying to run meetings that in Zoom, they turn the video off. Mm-hmm. They turn their video off in a real live meeting too. They're not there. They're checked out, you know? So this is not new. I mean, I think that it's a little bit easier to use the digital connection as a kind of a simple way to explain why you're not connected. But you're absolutely right. If there isn't an emotional feeling that's what bridges the connection, like we do find here. And I'm leading and participating in multiple workshops, both personal and professional, and it's very engaged, very connected. You know, and the breakout thing, I did a Seth Godin bootstrapping workshop where there'd be like 100 people on an hour call, and you'd break out and you'd be with 5 people, and it's almost like speed dating. You'd learn a little bit about each other and then come back together. We were all there. We were all interested. The information and the interaction had value to all of us. So we were checked in, you know? So, and I think it's the same thing. I mean, Facebook it evokes emotion, you know, whether it's a giggle at a cat video or being pissed off at someone's political view. It's emotion that keeps you engaged. We'll binge on Netflix for 12 hours. Why can we do that? Emotional engagement, right? It captures our attention and fills some kind of need. So, you know, so I think any meeting, regardless, if it doesn't capture the attention of the participants and fill a need, they're going to tune out, whether they're there in person or not. I don't see it as being relevant. And with that being said, actually this supports it. We just asked this question with the martial arts school because we're doing hybrid learning. So every student has the option of intermingling, depending on how they feel about it, in-person socially distanced classes and Zoom classes. And we asked that question, are they burning out on Zoom? And the reality of it was the ones that are engaged in their training in their martial arts journey are doing fine. The ones that are not engaged for whatever reason, the environment, us, them, some, combination of all of it, they're not doing well, whether they're showing up in person or on Zoom. So the medium hasn't mattered. It's more about how you feel about your level of engagement and attention to what's happening in that gathering place.
Go ahead, Shelley. I'll hold my thought.
I would agree to some level of that. Being a intuitive and empath and being able to feel other people's energy without the mechanics of video. That's where for me the barrier. Like, I agree as far as if there's some emotion and someone's engaged and they want to learn, and that you're right, it doesn't matter what medium, they are gonna pursue that. Mm-hmm. But as far as really the connection and relatedness between people in a conversation, there's for me, and it's not for everybody, but there's more than just the words behind it. It's the tone of the voice, the movement of the eyes, the tilt of the head that's going to tell me whether they understand or not. All of those pieces, right? And you can't, for me, I don't have great eyesight, and I'm like, okay, well, is he looking at me, or is he looking at the cat, or maybe he's just looking at the wrong side of the. So those are pieces, right, that I'm missing. Maybe they're not as important as to what I do, but it's a piece for me that I'm having to learn to kind of navigate a little differently.
Have you ever gotten that feeling from a book, from just words on paper, or does that not? Because we all have different ways of processing, so it could just be that you process better with that visual, like Absolutely. a kinesthetic communicator needs proximity, touching, even the rhythm and cadence, and spatially how you orient yourself. You do much better, than a visual communicator. They need to see it. They need, speed and flashy, and then auditory needs slower cadence and a little bit of distance. So I wonder if that's a really good point. Depending on how you process, we see it with kids all the time. How they process determines how well they engage, even if they want to be engaged. Right. How's the material coming to them? And we have to layer it to try to meet all of those different nuanced learning styles that we all naturally have.
I'd be curious to know how, the distance learning and the homeschooling or the pieces and, the interactions, if that differentiates from when they're just all in classroom, so to your point, the different ways of learning, are they going to be able to, at home with mom or whoever, have a different way of learning and be able to engage better, or disengage because mom doesn't know what I need?
Yeah, it's been interesting. We've had a lot of conversations with parents, and we've worked for years with people who homeschool way before this happened. And actually they don't feel that people who have been in the school system aren't homeschooling now. They're getting schooled at home. There's a difference, to them. It's funny. They can get kind of touchy about it. But one of the interesting things, we've talked to a lot of parents, actually, kind of helped quite a few of them. We call the learning cockpit, and it's if their child is in their home environment and they associate that not with school, they associate with the things they do at home. So creating an environment around them that's unique to learning seems to help. So, so what's the parent doing? What's their situation? If it's chaos and there's 7 kids and they're just unfolding a laptop and they're in the world of distraction, and 3 of their brothers are playing Nintendo while they're trying to learn, how successful are they going to be? There's like so many variables. I don't know how they're ever going to really know what's happening.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's definitely interesting, you know.
I bet.
What you got, Bill?
Yep. Next.
I was just timing how long it would take before there'd be an opening. I was just really engaged watching the 2 of you go. So I was sitting here, and I'll just give you, like, you know, the cliff notes of the outline of the thoughts that I had. The first one had to do with, we're talking about the intimacy in this media, and I was wondering, would you do an experiment with me? How about we all turn our video off just for a minute and see what that's like? I've had different experiences in different meeting rooms. And I have to tell you, I have thoughts when I look around and I see a large group with 60, 80 people in it. Some people, their facial expressions, they're emoting, they're listening to the speaker. You look a little bit further along, they have a name in black and white. You look a little further along, they have this beautiful, you know, picture, headshot in glad rags and all the rest of that stuff. And I really wonder, I agree completely with Ken. On to the next outline point, is that I believe that everyone in the day learned how to look and participate in life as if they were watching TV with a clicker, you know, and tuning in and tuning out depending on who's speaking and what the topic is and whether or not the person's good looking. And then I think that some of those people, Shelley, when they're making those eye movements and all the rest of that stuff, they're looking at themselves to see how do I look on camera here, you know? So, you know, I don't put anything past anybody, but the 3 kinds of communication, we've talked about this before, you know, structural, immediate, and representational. The structural is the one, if we turn our sound off now, and I'll give you a hand in the air when we stop doing that. So what we created there, no movement, object to object, you know, and we have these things that we can do to process the input of the image. However, what we're coming up against is, this is how I get to hug you, okay? You are now no longer a warm, fuzzy being. You're a laptop. And that's as close as we get to having intimacy in this environment. So then the next one, which is immediate, and we can turn our sound off again for this one. That's how we communicate with animals and babies that have no language. You know, so that immediate, I do something, you do something, we have this engagement, and there's actually a contract, you know, that we're working with each other in a conversation. And yet at the same time, I don't know, did either of you 2 guys feel any bodily sensations while we were doing that, like being a little bit happy and, you know, maybe a little tingly in your shoulders, you know, or that sort of, yeah. Yeah, with the immediate, like, yeah, I'm getting you, you know what I mean? Yeah, receiving message, whatever the message is, I don't understand it, but I'm getting it, right? And then the last one is all of our argle-bargle and jiggery-pokery, right? I'm stealing that from Cloud9. Argle-bargle, these are real words. I had to look them up.
Jiggery-pickery?
A jiggery-pokery. And both of these, as from the sound of it, they're also a little onomatopoeia going on there. But what they are is they're foggers and noise in communication.
Yeah.
It's where you say something other, you know, it's a little bit like Jabberwocky, you know, where you use words and, you know, the person listening to it says, that sounds familiar, but what the heck is gyre and gimbal or the wave? So the whole notion of having representational language, which is why we have, over 350 major languages and over 10,000 dialects and whatever that is. Okay, I'm making this up completely right now, but you're going along with it. Thank you. So that's why people can sit in the same room and have 100,000 different words that describe a chair. It's representational. It's by agreement. It's through trial and error. It's passed down from generation to generation, and then it gets changed over time. So the whole idea there is when we're in person, all three of those different types of communications are we're engaged in that object to object, the immediate language. But when we talk on the telephone, it's so important to be smiling because people actually have been trained to hear if a person is smiling or not, right? And in this particular case, when people turn off their microphones and put up a beautiful picture of themselves that is stationary, it's essentially shutting down all communications. So what I wonder is this not now kind of like the stepping off point from where our media has taken us in looking at the boob tube 10 or 12 hours a day? That all there is for us to see is what they show us. And does that create intimacy or does that create fear and aloneness? So in terms of how this works, and I have a theory why so many people are risking going back out to be in groups of people. And I'll give you an example. Shelley, I understand the Breakfast Club had 60 some odd people that showed up for Melissa's get together over her apartments in Manchester. They were all socially distanced, Melissa Boucher.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So she has this fabulous thing. I don't know what the exact number was, but they were planning for somewhere around 60. Far too big a number for me, with far too many variables. I didn't go. And they had the time of their lives, and they all told me about it. At least a dozen different people said, you were missed, and we're sorry you weren't there. This isn't satisfying people all that much. So if it's not,
why are we doing it?
Therein lies, why are we doing anything, Shelley? Why indeed?
Well, it's kind of like, starting a business. We're kind of in the midst of that, right? Why? What's the problem? Find a solution, or where's the need? Where's the aggravation? And if you have a solution to that aggravation, all of those questions, right, kind of come into play. This is something that has been kind of given to us. So now we kind of have to adjust where we sit and go, okay, how do we move forward with this? We know how to work this. Now, how do we tweak it? And if we're going to tweak it, which way do we tweak it? We don't even know that yet, right? These are things that just kind of keep emerging. So hence why things are so fluid. And I think people continue to push that envelope to see what is going to work in these given uncertain COVID, unrest times. I think that we have a whole year, if not more, of just playing with this and seeing what works. And then it's going to work maybe for a month or two, and then something's going to change. This is where I think people are going to be exhausted. I know it has exhausted me previous 2 months, just being able to follow it and keep up with it and go, okay, now this is changing. Okay, now, we're used to a fast-paced world, but not things changing so much on a dime that we have to adjust everything as to how we approach it, how we sell it, how we receive it, takeout, delivery, blah, 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 right? So I think once that slows down and we kind of nail pieces and parts of the process that work, we're going to come up with a whole new set of parameters that people can agree upon, that are okay with, so forth and so on. And we may have 2 different venues. People get together at Melissa's, and then there's some that are on Zoom.
Or 4 guys go to Banana Brazil Grill for lunch yesterday. I was there.
Exactly. So,
four's not a scary number to me. And
no.
Ken knows me. Nothing's scary to me. However, I have no idea what I can do to defend myself against something I can't see.
That's the other piece, right? So I don't think there's going to be a right or wrong answer. I think it's just going to be dependent on the approach and the group and the information, right? So there's going to be different avenues. So here we are starting really from ground up. The information that comes through best on Zoom. Maybe it needs to be put into a module or a learning, webinar. There's just so many unknown questions, and I try not to go there because it's going to change tomorrow. In my world.
What's really interesting is back remember when business conference calling really got started? In the early 1970s, it was an expensive feature that only major corporations could have, right? And then later on, at the end of the 70s, and once they started with the electronic switching equipment, you could click your receiver twice and then dial another number, click it twice, and then put it on. Right. So then we got cell phones, and it was just too easy. You couldn't hide by being in the car anymore, right? I'm going for a drive. I've got places I got to be, so I'm sorry I won't be on that meeting. Well, they always scheduled the meetings for 1-hour intervals. Mm-hmm. Telephone meetings, and we're going to have a call tonight, a coordination call for all of the different corporate locations across the United States and Europe. It's going to be at 8 o'clock. Because that's when Tokyo wakes up and they'll be able to be on the call and all that good stuff, right? And they were 1-hour calls, always 1 whole hour, whether we had anything to talk about or not. Later on, they started getting the bills for these things, and they said, wonder if we can get that business done every single night in a half hour. So we did that. And then, maybe we don't need to have everybody on the call, right? So what I'm starting to see here, it's always easier to be engaged in something where only one of your senses is involved. And the sense of hearing in the phone sense is far less exhausting than having to look at something and process both the video image and also the auditory image, right? So after 6 or 7 hours of Zooming every single day, that can be physically exhausting, especially if you're actually not engaged in a conversation or dialogue where it's all watching, listening, and trying to take it in. And at some point, short-term memory is full, can take no more. And as a result of that, as far as you know, I'm still here. Because I'm still on the call, right? But there's something, to me, there's something about this that's very authentic, where it's the same thing as if we were in person and we could hold up a sign to the other person or the group and say, I've stopped listening to you. Can you even imagine what that would be like? So the next corollary to that is, in terms of the communication and in terms of how their participation, I say, is falling off. Are you seeing that in what you're doing as well, Shelley?
No.
Numbers of people?
No.
Does it seem to be voluntary or does it seem to be mandatory?
Well, so, all my business clients, it's all voluntary. My staff calls, they're mandatory. So, again, I think it has to do with the need, or, the pull of why they are wanting to engage, just as Ken was saying.
Yes.
It does come back to that. Obviously staff calls and business calls, again, mandatory, 25 people, half of them mute, video off.
All right.
Including your state director. It's like.
So if I may be so bold, that's almost the same thing as not getting on the call, isn't it?
Pretty much. I mean, it gives everybody else the right to do that.
Agreed.
So let me just give an opposing view. When
Sure.
the video was turned off, when we did that made it easier for me. Like,
Absolutely.
I can concentrate better because I am an auditory processor.
Mm.
So if I have my choice and understanding that if someone says, look, I have my kids here, I don't want to be a disruptor. I'm going to keep my, video off and stay on mute, or I'll process better. But if you want to check in with me, just say my name. I'll click on, take responsibility for setting the environment,
Mm-hmm.
and ask yourself the question, how can I be an active participant in this right now? This is where I am. I got this moment and that's it. Who am I? And it's funny, as we're talking about connection, can you see this?
Mm-hmm.
This is by my bedside.
Marcus Aurelius.
Marcus
You
Aurelius.
never quote him.
Patience. Yeah. So, and I read usually a passage, in the morning, and I've obviously never met him. He's been dead for 2,000 years. I don't really know what he looks like. I've never heard his voice. And I feel a deep, meaningful connection to this man, his experiences, the life that he lived. And I love the fact that this journal, that it was written not for anyone to read. They were just notes to himself. So he didn't even write it for anyone to see it. He just wrote things that helped him function during his time 2,000 years ago. So, so I question our ability to connect as being something that's bound by space, time, medium, anything else, unless we've decided that we're going to have it, that we want it to be that way,
Sure.
So, and I mean, with kids, they're just honest about it. If they're bored, they'll turn off the video, or they'll act out, or they'll do something that stimulates them. They're just going to do that, So, but as adults, hopefully our brains are a little more developed. And, Michael Singer talks about it in The Unfettered Soul. He says, if you're in a meeting and you're paying more attention to the voices in your own head, stop doing that. It's a choice. Pay attention to the other person instead. It might be hard at first because it's new. It's not your pattern, but you can do it, So it's easier for me to do this with audio only. And it's important for everyone else that there be video. So I practice that, and that's it. But it's still a choice on my part, and I've gotten better at it actually, because I'm not very good I don't like the video thing at all. So I'm uncomfortable with it, and have been since this all started. But it's important, and it's how I can contribute and add value. So I just keep practicing it and do the best I can.
I can give you some advice on your discomfort, because I have to tell you, for the first 2 months of all this Zoom stuff, I was very self-conscious too.
Yeah.
I have a complexion that has about 19 different colors and flavors on it, from a combination of different operations and, what have you, right? So grow a beard, Ken. I mean, that actually, this is my new avatar. This is my stationary picture on the screen. I know people are looking more at my beard than they are at the red blotches on my face.
I made it. Military taught me short hair, clean shaven, and I think I've made it in my entire adult life. I don't think I've ever made it more than 3 days before it drove me completely nuts and I had to shave. I've never been able to do it.
Well, the last time I had a beard, my 39-year-old daughter was 4, and I had the beard for about a year and a half. And I've now had this, I want to say this is now my 3rd month or ish. 3.5
That's
months
awesome.
or so. But the point is that this has so many side benefits. You know what I'm saying? I do not. I mean, I shampoo my hair, I shampoo my beard. You know, I don't have to shave. I don't carve my face up anymore, and it's quick and easy. You know. So what I'm saying to you is that when all of this started, we didn't even have we canceled our March facility friends meeting because none of us felt comfortable about being on the medium at all. And then we found out there's some loonies out there that are doing this at the chamber, and they're doing this over here, and they're doing it over there. And I have to tell you that last week I checked out, actually 2 weeks ago, I checked out and I said, I cannot do anything more than the minimum mandatory Zoom meetings because I can't go through the contrived nature of the programs. You know what I mean? With everybody taking a turn doing this and doing that and all the rest of it. And being left with, this is turning into, it's turning into entertainment. It's not turning into business enhancement or growth and development communication. And when it turns into entertainment, what goes on in my head is, did that really just happen? We're business people. Did somebody just ask me which one of the Brady Bunch I am on this Zoom call simply because we're all stacked over top of each other? No, you didn't say that, did you? So then we have an attorney, you know, a guy that is actually a litigator, and then we have another guy, you know, that owns a string of Dunkin' Donuts, and some of us are older, and we're going like, frickin' Brady Bunch? Like, really? Okay. So where we are right now is, this is it until we get the next thing. And after America Online, I don't know if both of you were engaged in the chat rooms and how cool it was. You've got mail, you know, every 45 minutes of dialing in with your 9600 baud modem so that you can go and see if your last post had gotten an answer by anybody. It became addictive. Well, there were lots of other technologies that came out of that. And one of them was a very visual technology called Palace. And what this allowed you to do, allowed very creative people to take images of famous people and then, you know, depixelate and then populate different parts of it so that you could actually have motion, and you'd have hearts, you know, that expanded. And well, anyway, there was all of this really cool extra effect that could come along with it. I'm kind of wondering if where we are right now, it's kind of like the MySpace, you know, to America Online, or the Facebook to the MySpace, or the, you know, the Instagram to Facebook. What's the next big leap here as far as communication medium? Do we all get to pick out an avatar, and some of us show up like Mickey Mouse? And
pretty much.
Yeah.
That could be. And then the avatars could hug. Is that what you're kind of thinking? And
oh my goodness.
Right?
Yeah. And so I guess the whole, where I started with the whole idea today was looking at how this medium has become such a barrier to communication with regard to the, I want to call this subliminal training that's done by all of the comparative media, online, radio, television, streaming content, the subtleties that are in that over time you start to see people who listen to certain types of content react quickly. You know, they hear a word and it sets them off, and they're to battle stations over a word, you know. And quite frankly, I don't remember things being that way in conversation back in the 1970s and early 80s. People, I thought, had gotten to a place where they were better at listening and then asking questions about what was just said. And there's actually this engagement and a dialogue going on, as opposed to somebody who was pretty much looking for a fight, you know? And they didn't know they were looking for a fight. Did you ever have anybody like in your high school or grammar school that all you had to do was just put your hand on their shoulder or something, whatever it was that would set them off, and they wouldn't be right for the rest of the day?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like we have almost half of our population that's an open, nerve when stuff like that is coming on. And when there's something that's been completely documented as having happened, they're saying that never happened, because if it had happened, we would have heard about it, and we don't know anything about that. And it's not being reported. And on the other side, we had this conversation a little bit last week. We talked about gaslighting, Ken. Are you familiar with that term?
Yep.
All right. So over time, very slowly, you can take people through a process of where they don't trust their own thinking any longer. Mm-hmm. And they're waiting for you to tell them how to think next. It's almost like the line in the Pink Floyd Welcome to the Machine song, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What do you think? It's all right. We told you what to think, right? Mm-hmm. So are we at a point where some people are going to start turning the media off? All right. Are we at a point where, much delayed, there are going to be some facts that come out that people are now going to say, why didn't we ever hear about this before? What's up with that? And people who, is it possible more people will just not listen to any of that type of information anymore? Yeah. Me too.
Me. I haven't watched TV. In fact, I canceled my YouTube TV. There's no need in going back to your polls. People, there's really no debate. I think there are either people who are just tired of Trump and they're going to vote blue, and those who are just so pro-Trump and they're going to vote. Doesn't matter if that whatever is said, right? I don't think the polls, I don't think anything that the media is measuring is going to be close to truth. I don't think they can accurately measure anything anymore because of the different mediums, or I should say avenues of how people are getting information or not. They're just turned off.
I know it's funny. The only voting conversation that I have with anyone personally is about a better system of voting. And actually, there's some really cool stuff about ranked voting. Actually, Seth Godin on his podcast, Akimbo, did a really cool one. Freakonomics has done some neat stuff. So it's not about, I know we have to deal with the immediacy of, this next election. To me, a better use of time and a more productive conversation is we're here. How do we learn from it and make it better? So that the selection process, how people vote, who they vote for, and who raises their hand to be voted for. Sure. If that all changes, then instead of yelling and screaming about the way it is, we can start having conversations about how to dissolve it so it's not that way anymore. So, but yeah, I agree with you guys. Like, that's why I'm barely on Facebook anymore. And just, it's, the news stuff. I actually watch it because I'm interested, watching it from a place of not judging it or choosing a side, but as best I can being an impartial observer and listening to what's behind people feeling that certain things are important and not trying to counter it or justify it, just listen, and then trust that my own core values and my own sense of having a north will help me make educated decisions and get the information I need to do the best I can,
I think that's a great personal attribute, and you've worked hard for it. I don't know anyone else like you, not another single human living soul. Okay.
Oh, there's tons of them out there. They just keep their mouths shut.
That's why I don't know them. And
Yeah.
the other thing that I want to just mention here is I'm actually talking about not even necessarily politics. And in fact, the conversation that I'm bringing here, you name anything, and people have been conditioned to have an opinion on it. And they have no actual firsthand information or experience with any of it. And it's like every once in a while, I hear somebody come out with something that sounds a little bit off to me, and I go, "Where'd you hear that?" That's just true. It's just true.
Yeah.
You know? Okay, can I go look this up? And for example, this is just pulling something out of thin air, and I know we're running close to the end here. A very close friend of mine posted on my page a post that basically said that in Portland, because the federal government sent in troops, there was peaceful demonstrators that were beaten and assaulted and all the rest of this stuff. So now this is day 74.
Mm-hmm.
And there had been burning and looting and rioting since day 4. From day 1 to day 74, the 18 major networks said peaceful protesters hundreds of times a day. Never showed any burning, never showed any looting. They're now finally doing that because the mayors in both Chicago and Portland are saying, we got a problem here. They're not responding to us anymore. They're still just doing their own thing, even though we called them off. So I'm saying whoever they are as a human being, they're good. Whatever they believe, they've come by it honestly. Mm-hmm. Not their fault, okay? You cannot go against your core training, and whatever you have had beaten into your brain over and over and over, subtly over years, you're not seeing the world as it really is. You're seeing it through a filter. And what I'm saying is there has to be some kind of retraining to 300 million people to get them back to the point where they will listen again, mm-hmm. where they're actually interested in a positive outcome for everyone, as opposed to an us against them on one of about 300 different subjects. You name anything, there's people on one side, there's people on the other. Mm-hmm. And this whole light the candle, stepping off to a world that works, is about inviting people to talk to each other and to listen to each other. And for God's sake, don't compromise. Never compromise. You always want better than that. Compromise being an agreement in which both sides are equally unhappy. Let's synergize. Let's go for win-win or no deal for a while, but let's stop killing each other. Let's stop fighting and burning and looting. That's the goal. Mm-hmm. That's the goal. And with that said, thank you for allowing me to give the the epilogue. And so if you'll be kind enough to say your goodbyes, Mr. Ken, and then Shelley, we will sign off and get this published so that people can look at it if they care to.
Awesome. Bye, y'all. Have a good week.
Have a good week. Stop, think, assess, and react.
Have a good week. And I want you to consider that any situation that strikes you with anything other than love for the other person, that's not your thought. You didn't put that thought there. Have a great week. Bye for now.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, A World That Works, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can hear us at exvadio.com/podcasts, Apple Podcasts app, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts.